Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Turning to coronavirus after a couple of days because of two reasons. One, because there is an important development or a turning point in the global response to the virus as countries have decided to open up. Some a little bit fast or very fast like many states in America, some a little bit cautiously as say Germany and some others in Europe, or some extremely cautiously, notably India, because countries have to open up their economies. It is a very strange binary. It's also not a sustainable binary that you have to make a choice between the health of your survival of your citizens or health of your citizens and the economy, because the logic also has to be taken seriously that you cannot protect the lives and health of your citizens if you let your economy die. So this binary is now being challenged. Now you can't fight this binary simply because you can't fight the virus. So you have to find a balance and you have to find a way around this. So you weigh your risk to health, risk to the economy, and see how you progress. And each country is now finding its own way. Say in large countries like say America or India, each state in some ways will find its own way, or many cities will find their own way because cities are more crowded and more prone to infection. So that is the one big development. Everybody is opening up in some way or the other. Nobody believes anymore that this lockdown is sustainable for a long time. One. Two, there is an exciting new development. And that is not a scientific development, that is not about a new treatment or about a new vaccine. 91 vaccines are under trial right now, of which almost a dozen have now reached the human trial stage, the various levels. But we are not talking about those. We are talking about testing today. This new development, which is exciting, is in the field of testing. Why is testing so important? The test we have right now, the RT-PCR test, is very accurate. It's extremely accurate. It's still the most accurate test. But there are some problems with it. One, it takes time, at least 24 hours. Second, it's expensive. And third, it's a bit cumbersome because it needs a lot of equipment, it needs a lot of facilities. It is not something that's available on a very quick basis. So there's been need for a faster test. We've had some antibody tests approved lately. We talked about the Roche test, which was approved last week by US FDA, and that test can give you a result in 18 minutes, is very accurate. So that is also on its way. But once again, somebody has to take out your blood, buy a machine, put the samples in that machine, and that machine then gives a result. So those machines will have to be bought, and a phlebotomist will have to come and take out the blood sample because it has to be taken from a vein. Now, April 26, Deborah Birx, who is heading the COVID action task force in the White House, she had said in an interview on a Meet the Press show on ABC in America that the breakthrough we are waiting for will be an antigen test. Her exact words were that this will be a breakthrough innovation if an antigen test comes in. Why? Because an antigen test is not looking for the living virus, live virus, or particles of the live virus as the RT-PCR test does. You know, it picks up the RNA from live virus, converts it into DNA, then multiplies it, and then it registers. That's why it takes time also. Nor does it look for antibodies, the new test, because antibodies your body doesn't produce immediately as the first viruses come in. Your body takes time producing the antibodies. So this new technology that she talked about, which she said will be a breakthrough innovation, was to be an antigen test. So what is an antigen? Virus comes into our body produces antibodies. Who tells our bodies to produce antibodies? Because viruses carry a protein on their outside, which reminds our body, which basically pricks our body into hurting. You have a shot when the injection, when the needle pricks, you tend to go and grab your arm. So that's a reaction. So similarly, your body is alerted or pricked or irritated, whatever, by this protein on the outside of the virus into producing antibodies. So that takes time for antibodies to show up in a test. But antigen comes with the virus, antigen comes with the bacteria. Whenever you are infected by an outside agent that your body doesn't like, antigens are brought along as excess baggage or necessary baggage. I shouldn't say excess, as necessary baggage and important baggage by this bad guy. This antigen, if you can pick up, then one, you don't have to look for the live virus because that takes time, convert RNA into DNA and then multiply it. And second, you don't have to wait until your body starts producing antibodies, so you don't lose time. So particularly for workplaces, this is a much more important test. Second, this is RT-PCR test was very good, but there were problems with it. As we said, one, it took a long time. Second, it was a bit cumbersome because of the way samples were taken. And third, it's very expensive. Now this test, if an antigen test works, it was presumed will be quite cheap. So now, last Friday, US FDA has given emergency clearance to a new antigen test. It is the first reliable antigen test which can also be scaled up in terms of production. In fact, so much so that you can produce 30 crore of these tests in a jiffy. That's what Dr. Deborah Birx said. So I have some stuff that I picked up from a couple of the very influential people who speak on Twitter in America, including Dr. Gottlieb, who is a former commissioner of US FDA 2017 to 2019, if I remember correctly. And he has said that, look, what this does is, this is 85% accurate. And this test has been invented or developed by a San Diego based company called Quidel Corporation. This picks up these proteins from the outer surface of the virus, the antigen proteins, and immediately gives you a result. It can give you a result in 5 minutes. Also, it is something which a physician, which a doctor or any path lab can perform without needing any special equipment. All it needs is the test. There has to be a nasal swab. You put it in a machine. That machine will give you the result in the next 5 minutes. Now, what are these machines? You don't need to buy new machines, say, as with the other tests. In this case, in the Western countries, a lot of the doctors have it because they use it to give their patients tests for strep throats. That is, when you have a streptomyces infection, then they do a test and then give you antibiotic. In India, they don't usually do it. In India, they say open your mouth, stick your tongue out, and then they write an antibiotic for you. But any path lab has this facility. Also, this is used to test for influenza. Several years back, I had got pneumonia in Europe. When I came back, I had to go to a hospital. The first thing they did was to give me an influenza test. It took no time. In maybe half an hour, they came back and said you are negative for influenza A and B. So this is how the test is done. So hospitals have this machine, path labs have this machine, and in the Western world, a lot of the physicians have this machine. In fact, Dr. Gottlieb said that in America, 40,000 physicians have this machine, which means when a patient comes who seems symptomatic or who the doctor suspects might have COVID-19, the doctor can give that patient a test. This test is 85% accurate. Now, it so happens that maybe 15% people who this test does not pick up or shows as negative, the doctor then has to apply the index of suspicion. I am quoting Dr. Gottlieb in this case. And the doctor thinks that, look, there is symptoms or there is a contact history or something, then doctor can send that patient for a more detailed RT-PCR test. What this does is, this does a massive amount of screening. So even when workplaces open up, this can be done for workplace screening as well, particularly for organizations that employ a lot of people. The important thing is, besides the fact that this is convenient, this is quick, done with already existing equipment, does not need a special lab to do it. The third important thing is it's very cheap. In America, it's only $5 in cost. Whereas, say in America, RT-PCR is $100. These costs are not the same in India. You have to apply purchasing power parity, but you can pretty much presume that this will be 5% the cost of the RT-PCR test. So you can conduct a lot of tests. So when economies open up, when countries open up, more people come to work, they will have to be tested again and again and again and again. The current practice that if in an office one person tests positive, you shut down the office, you seal it, that is unsustainable. Because if that goes on, then you cannot open up the economies. That's why it's important to have a cheap, quick, accurate, convenient test that doesn't require so much pathology tamjham. Now, there are some issues there. One issue is what happens if in a doctor's clinic or in a path lab, somebody is found positive. Then what about the doctor or the nurse who might have given the patient that test? Do you then put that medical personnel, those medical personnel into quarantine? And do you then say seal off the doctor's premises or the path lab? Obviously, new protocols will have to be developed because the world is talking about opening up. It cannot remain shut for much longer. So there, this test, which can also be produced in very large numbers very quickly, not just for America, but even for the rest of the world, is a very big development. Unless something goes wrong with it, right now it has the approval. I would say that this is a very big step forward, and if this moves, it's a matter of time before you start getting these in India as well, and then the Roche antibody test will come also. Then you will have, like, if I may say so, a platter or an assortment or a buffet, or a buffet of tests. So you can choose from any of these, right? It's like when the penicillin came, a doctor friend of mine always says, then we got a pistol with a bullet. Now, to fight bacterial infections, we have machine guns, missiles, rockets, anything that we want. So this now is widening your choices, and you can test at various levels because the priority is to open up. Now, as you open up, I'm also reading stuff from others. There are some Twitter handles that you should look at. In fact, you should look at also Caitlin Rivers, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins University, who's been giving a lot of detailed analysis of what it means to open up. And she says, to open up, you first have to see, you've now bought time through lockdowns by delaying the spread of the infection. You now have to see how much infrastructure do you have to be able to handle new infections as they come up, especially as all modeling now shows that when you open up, your infection rate might go up. So you still will have to calibrate it, or you will still have to sort of settle on a graduated response. You have to see how many more can you afford, how many beds do you have. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said yesterday in his daily press conference that he was accused by Donald Trump and others of having set up too many hospital beds, having acquired too many ventilators which were not needed. And he says it's good that we had more than we needed, and it's good that we didn't need them. But the fact is that we could have needed them. So now you know that each city, each country, each state, how much infrastructure have they had, how much they've been able to build over this last 6 weeks, and how much of a growth in infections they can afford. Now, that is the larger calculation that epidemiologists, that policy planners, that politicians will be making all over. Having said that, there is one more set of data which I will share before concluding today's Cut the Clutter. And that is, now in New York, so many people have died. I mean, terrible thing, but New York now has a large database of coronavirus deaths, almost 20,000 people. It's a lot of people in a city. But this data now gives us a lot of analytical data points and wisdom. So again, Dr. Gottlieb has analyzed it, and you will see that data on the screen, but I will give you some highlights from it. And this is data based on age, fatalities, percentage fatalities on that population base, and tells you who's more at risk and how much. And this data is not about infection cases. This is not about positive tests. This is only about hospitalizations. So the larger data is that every New Yorker, if you look at all New Yorkers between the age of 45 and 64, then 1 in 137, that is about 0.6, 0.7%. 1 in 137 of New Yorkers between the age 45 to 64 have been hospitalized for whatever period, 1 day or 3 weeks or a month, 1 out of 137. 0.25% of New York population is dead, has died from coronavirus. 0.25%. It's a lot of people, 0.25% of a large population. And this has happened when the infection rate in New York is about 20%, because serological studies, their antibody studies there show you that among New York's adults, about 20%, 21% are already infected. Obviously, most of them have been asymptomatic. So that is the larger data. But then if you go age-wise, then age 0 to 17, hospitalization is 1 person out of 5,699. So very small, 0 to 17. Deaths, total deaths including estimated deaths. They are confirmed deaths and they are likely deaths, which you don't know whether these happened because of this, but you're still adding these for benefit of doubt. So total deaths in this category are 9. So as a percentage, this adds up to almost nothing. And if you say 1 out of how many, then this is 1 out of 1,94,930 New Yorkers in the age group of 0 to 17 who have died. So this is really, percentages are negligible, so they are not even calculated. Then you come to the next group, that is the age group 18 to 44. Age group 18 to 44, 1 out of 548 people have had hospitalization. Of these, 692 have died, which means fatality rate is 0.02%. So which means out of 10,000 people in that age group 18 to 44, 2 have died as yet. So once again, odds are very, very low. Then you come to the business zone of demographics, that is 45 and above. So 45 to 64, as we had told you earlier, 1 in 137 New Yorkers has seen hospitalization. Now numbers are going up a little bit, of which 4,124 have died, which is a little over 1/5 of all the about 20,000 deaths which are being analyzed for this data. This fatality rate is 0.2% of the population, which means 1 out of 501 New Yorkers, which means 2 out of 1,000 New Yorkers. Then you come to a more senior group. You come to the group that is 75 plus. In the group 75 plus, 1 out of 45 has been hospitalized. 9,322 have died. That means almost half of all fatalities in New York. Fatality rate over the population is 1.66% or 1 out of 60. So this is where it goes up. And if you look at all fatalities in New York, then on all hospitalizations, then 1 out of 154 have been hospitalized, 18,626 have died. Fatality rate over population is 0.28%, and 1 out of 360 have died. Of course, when you take the entire population, take below 18 also, then fatality rate comes to 0.25%. And once again, since everybody knows that there is a distinction, coronavirus has a preference for men over women. If you look at the database of deaths in New York, women fatality rate is 0.17%, so 1 out of 585 women have died. Men fatality rate is 0.28%, that's 1.5 times as much as for women. So 1 out of 360 have died. So this database is now available. You can look at this and plan accordingly, and I bet every country in the world is looking at it very seriously, including experts in our country.